Okay, just hear me out. I know a lot of y'all might be mad that we didn't draft Jalen Carter instead of Bijan Robinson. But just imagine how much wilder this guy would have been if he would have got his hands on some of these Magic City lemon pepper wings. But another widely followed narrative is that we should have hired Bill Belichick instead of Raheem Morris. And with Bill Belichick's wow in his first game as head coach at UNC, Falcons fans ever the petty bunch. We dodged a bullet with Bill Belichick. Oh, and Falcons fans were irate. Yeah, Belichick has how many rings, and we dodged him? One of my favorites. Would have been a good culture shock, but I say this year after year, regardless of who's coaching or who's playing quarterback, the Falcons are and will always be the same exact team each season. Buckle up and prepare for the WTF and how long. So we decided to go interview Bill Belichick ourselves and get his thoughts. Bill, some fans think that you shouldn't have got the position with the Falcons.
Yeah, Falcons passed on me, said I wanted to be both coach and GM. Robert Kraft even called Arthur Blank, told him, great coach, terrible GM. Guess that stuck. So I end up at UNC, thought college kids might respect me more. First game, lost by 42. Not exactly a highlight reel, but hey, they still let me keep my job. For now, my girlfriend's a student there. She's younger than half my playbook, but she's still the best business manager I've ever had.
Well, there you have it. Hop into the bird bath. What's going on, family? It's your boy Simo the C. Mitchell. You checked into another episode of the Falcons Bird Bath. Shout out to our loyal fans and our weekly subscribers. And if you haven't, hit that like and subscribe button in the comments below. Tell us what you guys are thinking about what we're talking about in the comments. And give us your opinion on who's going to win week 1. Falcons home season opener is just days away, and we're playing against the Buccaneers. Now, this ought to be an interesting game. A little bit of the game plan and some of the injuries. First and foremost, the Falcons decided to bench Ruke for Brandon Dorlus. Now, I've seen a lot of complaining about the fact that we traded up for Ruke and that we're benching him for Brandon Dorlus. For one, I don't think it's because Ruke didn't do a good job and it's anything to do with his performance, rather than it's more to do with Brandon Dorlus' performance and how much he stood out during camp and during preseason. Brandon has been an absolute menace out there on the defensive line, and I think he earned this position. I don't think it's a bad idea that you have a guy from the same draft class that you drafted, but just a couple rounds later is outperforming the guy ahead of him. Sometimes these things happen, and you want to cultivate all the talent that you have. But again, I think that Orhorhoro is actually a pretty good player still, and you want the best players you could have out there at all times. And Ruke still offers a lot. These guys are going to be rotating in people so often that it almost isn't going to matter who's a starter or who's not a starter. As of right now, on the roster, we only have 5 guys who play as interior linemen. We'll be bringing back TQ Graham in a few weeks, but as of right now, that's all we have. So we know Ruke is going to get a lot of burn. He's going to be very integral to us having. He's going to be a huge, so we're going to need him out there, and I think that we're going to see him a lot. My keys to the game would be to shut down the running offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'd go out there and not make Baker Mayfield beat me on making the best throws, making the best reads, and making the best decisions with the football. I would put Baker under a lot of distress. On the edge, I'd definitely be doing as much to stress the pass rush and the backups that they have in there. I'd be sending all of my edge guys at that left tackle position. I'd make him beat us with the blitz, make the proper hot reads. I'd take away the middle of the field, and I'd keep him off of play action. Buccaneers have a very explosive offense, and if you're not careful, they'll get deep on you regardless of what you do. But having play action just opens it up a lot more for Baker Mayfield, and it only enhances what he's able to do. Baker's not a bad quarterback, but I want to make him make the proper plays. In one of the losses, he actually threw the ball 50 times. That's what you want to force. You don't want to let them get to running the ball consistently. You want to be able to stop some of the chunk plays, but you want to stop the effectiveness of their running plays. One of the other places that we got hurt a lot last year was Baker being able to use his legs to get an open field and make a lot of plays with his feet once the play broke down. I think that this year we actually have guys who could stop Baker and spy him, and we have a lot more athleticism on the field this year. Right now, we have 3 edge defenders who were not on the roster at all last year. This is a massive upgrade up front in our defensive edge, as well as in our secondary unit. We've added some tremendous players to our secondary in the rookies, Billy Bowman and Xavier Watson. We also added Jordan Fuller. We have Bam Bam, Hitman Helms back out there. Adding Bowman at our nickel makes our cornerback room a lot better because guys that were starting last year like Clark Phillips, D. Alford are both coming off the bench now. When you look at Arnold Ebiketie, he's running around and flying to the ball, and he has great pursuit angles this year. And I think a large part of that is that he knows that we got 2 dog rookies in there who could take his position, take snaps away from him, and affect his money long-term and his output this season in a contract year. You got Leonard Floyd out there. He knows that that's a vet who's hungry, who wants to get another contract and wants to get an extension. So we got a lot more competition out there with a lot of these guys. The tight end position gave us a lot of trouble last year. Cade Otton over the middle. He's nursing an injury, which we'll get to in a second, but Emeka Egbuka is a guy that we really going to have to look out for. The Bucs have played Buka in the slot a lot, but I expect them to move him all around the formation. You could also see Mike Evans in the slot as well, too. So our rookie, Billy Bowman, is going to have his hands full, and this is a big game for him to be able to step up to. I also think it's a really good game for his first start to be able to build his confidence. Of course, he could be in for a long day, but Baker Mayfield is one of the better quarterbacks in the league who isn't necessarily a top 5 quarterback. You don't have to think about him in the way that you got to think about a Patrick Mahomes or the way that you got to think about Lamar Jackson. He's not a guy like Joe Burrow who's just going to surgically tear you apart piece by piece. He makes a lot of good plays, but this is a pretty good receiver course. Any given moment, you could see a mismatch with him in height against Mike Evans and even against Ibuka. So, and if I was the Bucs, that's exactly where I would try to attack as well, too. Although Mike Evans has had his way with A.J. Terrell at times. But I'd definitely be trying to test the rookies, make them prove that they can hold it down out there. Of course, likewise, the Falcons have some problems on their offensive line as well, too, and we're going to have a lot more blocking tight ends, staying in and helping us. But I believe that we're a lot better equipped to be able to handle that than the Buccaneers because we have a more athletic quarterback. We're going to hop into a little bit more deep dive with the injuries. Talk to our resident sports specialist and Steve Hightower. We're going to get his thoughts a little bit on Bijan Robinson as well and his outlook of them for the season. Yeah, man. So we definitely going to get into a little bit of your outlook on Bijan Robinson for the season. I believe that the Falcons' offense is going to be a lot more wide open. Let's get into that a little bit.
Okay, so let me tell you, Bijan he's very mobile. He has great length, arm reach. His route running is pretty decent. His hands are pretty good, and he's very reliable. This will suit the Atlanta Falcons offense even more this year than it did last year. With his size, his dexterity, his mobility, he should be able to prosper like he hasn't done before. I think that it could open a different door to where he could be the most exciting player on the field. Matter of fact, percentage-wise, if I'm correct, and I may not be, I believe that last year he was at least 38% of the offense.
Oh, yeah, probably more than that.
Okay. Looking this year at him being at least half of the offense if he can stay healthy. So I'm just saying that with his ability to do what he does. Now, let's look at the numbers again. Let's look at these. The average cornerback is 6'1", 192. No matter how you look at it, Bijan's a mismatch against the average quarterback. So if he lines up in a slot, if he lines up on the outside in any magnitude, he's still bigger than that person. If he comes out the backfield and he's dealing with a linebacker, it's still comparable because of his speed and his dexterity. It's a win-win for Atlanta. It's a win-win for Bijan. Bijan should tear the league up.
Right.
He really should be. Matter of fact, you earlier talked about fantasy football. I'm not going to lie to you. If I was doing fantasy football this year, he would be one of my first 3 picks.
Oh, man, you already know. I got sucked back into a league this year. I unfortunately was not able to draft him in either of the leagues because they had me drafting toward the bottom. But, yeah, Bijan would have probably been my number 1 player off the board. Maybe Jamar Chase, but, yeah, Bijan because of so.
I mean, my number one, let's not get it twisted. I would not pass him with Jamar Chase. But Bijan would be definitely one of my top 3 picks. I would fight for him to be one of my first picks. I'm telling you. He's humble, but he's hungry. Right. And yet, if you watch him play, he's a patient player. He doesn't really overrun holes. He doesn't really make too bad decisions. He picks up the pass decently, but he's such a threat that you can't not be tempted to put 2 people on him down there. Right. Because if you set him free, it's a wrap. If he has a 100-yard day, I'm telling you, there's a receiver on that team that doesn't even have to be the number 1. He can be the 2 or the 3. And he can have 80 yards, 200 yards also, just because Bijan is so effective.
Right. Now, it definitely opens up somebody. I think that's why Mooney or whoever you place into that role can be so effective, even if Mooney is hurt this game because he's dealing with that shoulder injury. I think that even Ray McLeod could be such an effective player. And we had a lot of success in the seams as well. And using Kyle Pitts actually is a huge matchup problem for them. So I believe that we could
think about it for a second. If Pitts is healthy,
which he is,
if Bijan is healthy, if Penix is on top of his game with his ability to make multiple reads, to be calm enough to get the ball to the right place, and yet still be athletic enough to run and be effective via foot. If you look at those three factors alone, it's a little scary for another team to have to come in there and play against Atlanta because you just don't know who you're going to get. But somebody's going to eat it up. Somebody's going to prosper.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel like it becomes a pick your poison thing. And even a lot of times last year at time we see games where Pitts wouldn't be on the stat sheet that much, but there's times where they're double teaming Pitts even on intermediate routes to make sure.
Well, they should. They should. He can be that effective. But if they're double teaming him, I'm telling you, Bijan whooping somebody's butt.
Absolutely. We have a lot of guys that are getting open because of the threats that each person has. Atlanta was one of the only teams last year that had 4 receivers. It might have been the only team that had 4 receivers in 600 yards receiving.
They may have been the only team. They may have been.
Ray and both Pitts had at least 600 yards. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Let's get into a little bit of the injuries on both of the teams that could affect the game specifically. Tristan Wirfs, we could rule him out because of the intricacy and the amount of contact and the speed it's going to take for him to even adjust to the pass rush. Definitely a place that I think that the Falcons want to attack. Cade Otton, he's got a groin injury that he's dealing with. Or can we expect them to still be a little bit light with the amount of reps that they give him during the game?
So what they'll probably do is they'll probably put him out there from the beginning of the game, see how he does, and they'll go off of what he says, if he's comfortable or not, unless there's something definitive that they see in his movements or lack of movement or reaction time. The average tight end, their turnover speed isn't that superior to other players on the field. Remember, I said normally.
Normally, right.
Is normally not going to be as fast as a wide receiver. So that separation speed, the speed off the line, isn't usually as important. It's great if you have it, but normally with your tight end, they're going to, in the flats, they're going to circle in the middle of the field. They're going to go to open areas. In many cases, you don't have to have great speed and your initial burst. It's more about you have to be a thinking player. You have to really read a defense and see where the weak spots are and make sure that's where you are, even if it's in a set pattern or a non-set pattern. Unless he's the main or intricate part of the offense in regards to gaining yardage, you don't have to worry about him re-injuring that area as much as you would if it was a receiver.
And so that's an interesting thing as well, too, because last year against the Falcons, Cade Otton actually did a lot of damage, especially once Chris Godwin went down. Typically, they like to run a lot of 3 receivers. Godwin's a lot more of their possession short area guy. Once he went down, they played Cade Otton a lot more, gave him a lot more over the middle. That is a place that the Falcons definitely struggled with last year. We had problems with the back out of the backfield, and we had trouble with tight ends. Some teams don't have guys that can cover like that. We didn't have a plethora of linebackers that could, but we've actually upgraded that position.
The trend in the NFL right now is spread offenses. Everybody goes spread.
Everybody loves spreads.
It opens a defense and it creates more holes underneath.
Right.
Which is exactly what you just explained in regards to why the tight end is so important. They're not going to abandon that idea. That's not going to be abandoned because it is very effective. And when you have a tight end that can catch, it makes it almost like child's play, getting at least 7 yards a pop. You know, you got to remember, if you average 3 yards a play, you're 4th and 1 every time. It's only 1 yard to go. Worst case scenario, 1 yard to get a first down.
Right.
If you look at that as being the worst case scenario on average that you can have, I don't see there being a change in that at all. Matter of fact, if you look at what Atlanta's done, even with the amount of cornerbacks that they have on the roster, you look at them attempting to be prepared to keep receivers from prospering downfield as much. They're going to rely on their linebackers to do a little bit more work so they can try to tighten that up and control the tight end play. We'll see if it's possible. I think it is very much possible, but I don't see them abandoning the idea of.
with them having Tristan Wirfs out, I'd be wanting to put specifically Leonard Floyd and James Pearce Jr. I would put them on that side with the backup tackle, and I would force them to, want to block with the tight end a little bit more and keep a little bit more in pass protection.
That would happen. Exactly what you just said. It would cause increasing the pass rush on the tight end side. It keeps the tight end at home.
Right.
Right. So now, if I have the extra support that's deep, and they're trying to cut down the length of the field, and I am rushing on the side that the tight end may be on, we're putting pressure on the running backs because the receivers are being covered. The tight end is not going to be as used as readily as an emergency player or a dump-off player. And this is what you want to try to force more because running the ball is more tedious. I was a running back, so I love running the ball, but as effective as you can be running the ball, people don't want to see that. That doesn't really pay the tickets. People want to see long ball action. They want to see touchdowns, 30 yards down the field. It forces you to have to run the ball a little bit more effectively.
And one reason I brought that up is because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like with having that groin injury and not being 100% with that, I feel like, running around could limit some mobility. But I feel like he has more of a chance of re-injuring it, trying to stop somebody in pass blocking and trying to deal with someone like a James Pearce Jr., right?
No. Yeah. What you're saying is, let me tell you something. You were right on point. You were right on point. That's exactly what would happen. So if that's what they have on their roster, I mean, for all we know, he could be better than the person behind him, even with his injury.
With James Pearce Jr., there's a lot of talk about how he was so undersized and people being worried about him being able to play the run. But I think he's about 250 maybe. When you are that strong and that fast, it makes it hard to really, run at you sometimes. It can be a little bit tricky if you're able to, if you play with aggression and you have that type of speed along with your strength, because now you might be a little undersized, but it's hard to keep you in place when you're moving that fast and you have that type of strength.
Well, how about this? When you're that size, and they say that you're undersized, but you have the speed and the power, it's almost like you're a fire hydrant sitting on a corner. Doesn't seem like you're much until you need it. But when you need it, you have a big job, a big role. So,
right.
In this case, I think that it will be. I don't see any problem with his effectiveness.
Right.
Because of that, I think that it makes him more effective. The NFL is a speed game. It's a finesse game, more so than just pure power now. There's a lot of finesse involved, and he's a good combination. There's been many other defensive players that have filled the role and been his size that have been successful over the years. So I don't doubt anything about him.
Absolutely.
Jalen Walker is a guy that we have out there. He's supposed to get a lot of snaps in this week one as a rookie as well too, but he's going to be coming off the bench. He is actually himself nursing a groin injury, playing out there as an edge defender, outside linebacker. How do you think that's going to affect his game, conversely?
Okay, now this is where the groin will hamper you a little bit more. Your ability to go side to side and then turn and fully sprint. The transition from side to side shuffling action into a full sprint is hampered by groin injuries. Because when you turn to run, your body, you extend your knees high, and then that helps your leg extend itself out to get more length, right. Increase your what's called your gait, increase the gait, which will help you move faster, or to eat up more yardage. How about that? And that's where the groin is exposed, because the groin muscle then has to extend itself beyond a normal range, and it has to snap back into its original position just in order for it to do the same thing repetitively over and over again. Right. So for someone that's playing outside linebacker, that's a different story. Totally different story. Now we're looking at the fact that You have to watch that real close. That's going to definitely hamper you because there's the torque that is caused when you turn to run is much higher than if you are coming from a tight end position where you kind of ease into your route.
Right.
So if it's outside linebacker, even middle linebacker, different story, totally different story.
I know that they held him out of some of the final preseason and he wasn't practicing a few weeks ago. Raheem Morris did say that he feels that he's going to be ready and he's on track to go on Sunday. I believe that James Pearce Jr. is probably going to be the more standout player. He's going to be making a lot more of those splash plays out of the two guys and seemingly going to be more of the MVP of the defense if everything goes according to plan. But I believe that Jalen Walker is one of those guys that's going to be a lot more of an X factor in that expect for him to be the Jadeveon Clowney of outside linebacker, hybrid style guys, in much the way that Clowney was a really good run defender and you could kind of bump him a little bit to play somewhat interior or play that 3-4 defensive end or play a straight up edge defender. And Walker's definitely a good run defender. I don't think he's going to be a liability as a pass rusher, but more so than anything, you can also use him to spy quarterbacks. You can use him to break down back in coverage. One space that really hurt us at times last year was quarterbacks getting loose whenever we did have guys covered downfield and not having the type of guys that could recover even on their pass rush or redirecting their lanes and be able to pursue. I feel like we didn't have a guy that you could spy anybody like that, even to the point that Baker Mayfield isn't necessarily known for his mobility. He has some wheels on him, but if you have a good, some athletes out there, you could contain that. Well, that was a huge problem for us playing against them. I think that Jalen Walker should.
What I see is, first of all, with Walker, I think that he's going to fill that role better this year than he did last year. That's number one. I really do. Raheem is a defensive-based coach. So if you look at the changes or the adjustments that they made, or seemingly made from last year to this year, it's to increase the total team speed side to side and lengthwise. So it's not as if they want to be a little bit more complete than they were. And with the scheme that they and the personnel that they put in place or seem to be putting in place, they should be able to cover sideline to sideline much better, which will cut down on the effectiveness of, let's say, Baker Mayfield getting out and running, attempting to get first downs, scrambling, et cetera, et cetera. It should affect him by a couple of yards. It doesn't mean that he's not going to try it, but whereas he may have gotten 7 or 8 yards last year, it should be 3 or 4 yards this year.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. Number two is if you look at the fact that they're probably going to play a lot in nickel against Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Okay, it'll be in the nickel a lot. And with the people the personnel they also have deep, I think that there's more speed on the field now. I think that they believe a little bit more in the defensive players, even that are somewhat injured. I think that they have actually really done a much better job looking at what they needed. And we're going to find out very soon if the plan that they put together and constructed, if it works.
My game plan would be to do as much as I could to shut down their run game and force Baker to make plays, but force him into very uncomfortable spots. I know he can make passes on the run, but force Baker to make good decisions with the football. We know that that's an issue with Baker Mayfield, and I don't feel as though they have just one running back who's good at all three phases, being able to run, be a good receiver out of the backfield, and also be great as a pass blocker. Bucky Irvin.
That's the one thing that made Baker Mayfield so effective last year. Normally, when you're an undersized quarterback, which he is, somewhat undersized compared to other quarterbacks, a lot of times when you run, you're looking towards the one area that would cause the greatest gaps and weaknesses, and that's going to be the middle. Right. Once a play, once you give up, you hike the ball, and the play runs, normally the spot that ends up getting a little loopy is the middle. Okay, and that's why he tends to throw a lot of stuff into the middle of the field because that's where his outlets is going to be. So that's where that tight end plays. But that's why I believe that the changes have been made in Atlanta's defense to be able to make sure there's always somebody roaming in the middle, somebody that can drop in the pass into coverage, somebody off of that out of that linebacker crew that can kind of play a little bit more in the middle of the field as opposed to being committed to trying to do make the pass rush, and athletically make the adjustments that are needed to play both. So I think that this time around it'll be a different story. I think that he won't be as effective, and if he Frey breaks down and he has to scramble, I think that he's going to be more apt to make mistakes this time more readily than he did last year.
One spot also with, I'll say, on the Bucs defense, their defense was a little bit suspect most of last year. They seem to turn it around toward the end of the year. They're pretty solid against the run. They do allow a lot of passing yards. Darnell Mooney injury. They calling him day to day right now.
I believe that us having Bijan in some of that in those roles, this is one of those games where you can maybe lean on him to do a lot more with that. One thing that we heard Bijan specifically talking about in regards to Penix was how he's a lot more athletic than people expected or they think with him. I don't know if it's a throwaway comment, but he said, "Yeah, think like Philly with Jalen Hurts and RPO." And do you think there's a possibility that there may be that type of element and wrinkles being added into this offense, that they're going to do that type of thing with Penix, or do you think they're just going to let him use his athleticism to get out of the way? But
no, what I'm going to say right now, the way the league is, if you have a quarterback that can run an offense of such, you let him run it because it's very, very effective. It keeps the defense in an uncomfortable place. Penix has enough ability. He showed it in college, even though you didn't pay attention. He was just in the wrong conference, and we didn't watch him on TV as much.
right,
By the time you realized who he was, it was time to give out awards. It was okay. A lot of times people didn't pay any attention to him. But can he do that? Oh, definitely. His foot speed is great. He makes great decisions. He's patient. Very much. Matter of fact, thinking about it, I think that he actually has more ability, more explosive ability than Jalen Hurts. I think that he's probably a little bit faster. I believe that he's taller. And I think he has more arm strength. And I'm not knocking Jalen Hurts at all.
right.
I think that he has everything that is needed to be more than effective.
Right.
With all his. I mean, I would love to see that. And it would make Bijan's job much easier, and it will make the receiver's job much easier.
Yeah, he talked a bit about that on the pivot, and it's interesting because we hadn't seen that out of him much. And this is something I want to ask you about as well too. A lot of people are like, "Oh, if Penix can make it through the season, if he can stay healthy, if he can not get injured." They talk about a lot of the injury concerns he's had, but he hasn't had an injury since he was in Indiana. He hadn't been injured when he was in Washington, and those two ACLs, those are years ago now at this point. I think we're 3-4 years removed. Is that something that we have to worry about with him as a player?
I don't think that it's anything that you need to worry about more than usual. The things is, you need to be worried about those things on average with any player.
Right.
But his history will show that he's definitely just as durable as any other quarterback would be, if not more. He's durable enough and he's been through enough trauma that I believe he believes in himself, even if amidst a minor injury. I just think that we didn't watch him enough to pay attention to what he really brings. If you're not watching the Atlanta Falcons, there's so many things you don't know about him. All you know is his name. So I wouldn't even worry about it. I think that they finally have found somebody that can usher him in the future, that can bring an excitement that you haven't seen for a while. I'm not going to say any names of other quarterbacks, But I think that right now he is the future of Atlanta, and it's something that all of Atlanta should be looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I agree.
All right, family, that's our show for today. Check back in with us after the game. Win, lose, or draw, we'll be here. C-Mo, the C Mitchell, Point Game Official. Checking out, baby.